Hi, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Risk, where our goal is to engage, inspire, and empower the global community of risk practitioners. And we do this every week through these informal and casual conversations. So, thank you for joining today. I'm your host, Naveen Agarwal. And, guys, I tell you, today I'm super fired up to welcome my guest, Omar Kalaa. He's the founder and principal at InnoVentrum, where he helps MedTech and telecom companies to design and launch very innovative, high performance wireless solutions in healthcare. And previously, he served at the FDA as a scientist and program manager in the Wireless Technology Research Program. So he has been deeply involved in development and application of wireless technology standards and regulatory requirements and expectations in medical devices. I can't wait to have this conversation. And with that, Omar, thank you so much for joining. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Naveen. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
So, Omar, just before we got on the show live, we were talking about your personal journey, how you got involved with the FD. I mean, you were pursuing a PhD in wireless communications and technology, and it's a non-traditional career path to end up
Yes,
at FDA. Can you tell us what happened?
sure. So, when I was doing my PhD in wireless communication, I was working on the topic of wireless coexistence as it applies to medical devices. That work was geared to be incorporated in the ANSI C63 standard for evaluation of wireless coexistence, which is currently recognized by FDA. So, toward the end of my PhD program, before a few months before I graduated, I got a call from a very good friend at FDA saying, "Would you like to join us as a postdoctoral fellow and continue in this area and help us evolve the standard and make it to put to a better use?" So I thought, well, this is a very interesting opportunity because look at medical devices today, nothing but computing systems that are connected, and you just throw in a bunch of sensors and actuators and you get a different type of medical device. But at the core, you can think of a very long list of modern medical devices that are basically connected computing systems. So I
Mhm.
thought there is a significant opportunity for me to learn. And I wasn't wrong. I
Mhm.
stayed with FDA for almost 8.5 years, and I had a great opportunity to expand my horizon, to learn from so many wonderful people, very knowledgeable scientists. To me, the most important part of my time there is that I was offered the opportunity to observe the impact of my contributions, which is an amazing thing to have.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it must be so fulfilling for you to see the work you have done leading to such improvement, remarkable improvement in people's lives. I'll share my personal experience with you and everybody. I started wearing a CGM in the last few months, ever since I, to my shock and surprise, found that I had elevated glucose, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm in reasonably good shape and high A1C. So I said, this has to be fixed. So I got the CGM, and I discovered that I'm a technical person too. So I was impressed by the sensor, but I think that the brain of this technology is on my iPhone in that app,
Mm-hmm.
and they're talking to each other wirelessly through Bluetooth. So this brings home to me on a personal level. And
Mm-hmm.
the work that you have done and others continue to do in this field
Yes.
is just remarkable. So thank you for that first. Let's start by you having us very briefly describe some of the key issues that engineers, quality, regulatory people should be aware of when it comes to including wireless technology in medical devices. What are some of the top level points?
Absolutely. I think the very starting point when considering to include a wireless connectivity modality in a medical device is by referencing the FDA wireless guidance. I think that is a very good resource that describes the high level thought process that should go behind incorporating wireless in a medical device. Some of these topics that I see continuing to have, I don't want to say problematic, but causing some confusion in device submissions include the topic of QoS, or quality of service. QoS, as it's presented in the FDA wireless guidance, is basically a concept that the FDA is inviting device manufacturers to think about their device needs for wireless connectivity. What type of data do they need to move from point A to point B? How fast and how often? And then, based on that very, very basic narrative, the outcome can be used in selecting the appropriate wireless connectivity modality and then starting that evaluation cycle into how that integration was done, what are the associated failure modes, how did we evaluate those failure modes. But I've often seen device manufacturers simply saying, okay, we'll use Bluetooth because I don't know, we like it or it's easy. And these are good reasons. There is nothing wrong with that. But that conclusion for which connectivity modality was chosen is coming without the rationale supporting why you chose it. Without that rationale, your subsequent evaluation steps will be hampered, honestly, because if you don't know exactly the needs for your device, how are you
Mhm.
going to create a test setup that stresses your device and see if it meets its needs or not? Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense to me, Omar, and it's sort of very similar to any other design choice that we might want to make, right? We have to have
Exactly.
clarity on our purpose, intended use, and be able to stand up for our design choices and decisions. So let's go into a bit more specifics. When it comes to, and particularly because we are interested in safety and risk management, from that perspective, what are some of the like couple of top factors or issues that we should be thinking about?
Yes. So to continue that thought process about looking in the quality of service that is needed to perform a wireless function in a medical device, the following step is understanding the risk category for that wireless function. And I think we as a community are very lucky for having an FDA recognized technical document from AMI, it's the AMI TIR,
Mhm.
that describes in great detail how to perform that risk assessment. Okay, so based on the specific wireless connectivity modality used in a given medical device and the intended use for that wireless function. So, what is it exactly trying to achieve as part of the overall medical function? It can be categorized into risk categories,
Okay.
ranging from negligible all the way to major. So, negligible, and it provides examples like negligible, maybe if a patient side monitor has a function to request a glass of water from
Mhm.
the nurse station. So if that glass of water was delayed, then sure, that's fine. It's inconvenient, but maybe
Mhm.
nothing will come out of it. But if the communication of a high priority alarm is delayed, then the patient might suffer consequences that
Yes.
can lead to death. And obviously, that function cannot be evaluated with the same rigor as one that is negligible. Basically, the AMI-TIR 69 says for negligible risk functions, it's fine. You don't need to proceed with testing for wireless coexistence.
Mhm.
But for risk categories ranging from minor to major, you should be testing for wireless coexistence. And it points to a different document, which is the NCC 637 standard that has specific technical guidance for how to test according to these different risk categories.
Okay. Okay. That's great for us to understand the
Mhm.
foundation of this idea. Like Omar, you mentioned something very interesting that I found particularly amazing is and somewhat confusing wireless coexistence for a non-technical person in this
Yeah.
area. Can you describe that a little bit more in layman's terms, and why do
Yes.
you think it is critical for us to think about wireless coexistence?
So, Naveen, thank you for the question. Yes, I think I jumped directly into using the term without introducing what it is. So, wireless coexistence, you can think of it through an example. Most wireless connectivity modalities in use by medical devices today, like Wi Fi and Bluetooth, rely on access to unlicensed spectrum. So they use mostly the 2.4 gigahertz ISM band, that is an unlicensed band. Unlicensed
Mhm.
means that you don't need to acquire a license from the Federal Communication Commission to use that band. It's freely available as long as your radio adheres to basically simple rules for the
Mhm.
type of power that it puts on the channel. You're free to transmit, and that differentiates Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, for example, from cellular connectivity, where cellular network providers use licensed spectrum bands, and
Mhm.
they acquire those licenses, which are very, very expensive from FCC, and they channel some of the cost into the monthly bill that you pay. But once
Mhm.
you have your own Wi-Fi router, you can create your own LAN at home for free. So being free and accessible also comes with a caveat, which is everybody can use it. So your CGM, Naveen, is sharing the same wireless channel as your Wi-Fi connected TV that is streaming Netflix. So now you have to ask yourself the question. Now, spectrum is a very limited resource, and you can push only so much data into a specific bandwidth made available by the FCC. And when both of those systems, your CGM and your Wi-Fi TV, are using the same channel, they have to share. And
Right.
if by sharing your device results in a degraded performance, how are you going to tolerate the consequences? And
Yeah.
that's the tie into the risk management approach for wireless coexistence. So wireless coexistence is not like a checkbox like that you say,
Yeah.
okay, I flipped the switch for wireless coexistence, now my device coexists.
Yeah.
That's a very primitive perspective. It is
So,
a risk management approach to it. Please go ahead.
yeah. Now, John is actually raising a good point, and a question here is that does coexistence for negligible risk met devices include impact on high risk devices in the same environment of use concurrently? That is a very interesting conversation here. Can you
Yes.
speak to that a little bit with an example? And what comes to mind is some safety critical devices that might be around us, but we are relying on another low risk medical device and studying that low medical risk device.
So instead of an example, I want to respond to John by an invitation, because what he mentioned is something of great interest to the standards committee that continues to develop the NCC 63.27 standard. And he is absolutely on point. Coexistence is a two-way phenomenon. And looking at how a specific device coexists doesn't inform how it's going to impact other devices in the environment. So in the specific example that John is mentioning, that if you have a low risk device and a high risk device in the same environment, from my perspective, both of those medical devices should have been evaluated for wireless coexistence before they were introduced to the environment to ensure that the negligible risk device, even if it fails, that's fine, but the high risk device can continue to perform safely in that contested wireless environment. Does that make sense?
It does make a lot of sense. And I think that is where I would emphasize the role of our medical clinical professionals to help us understand the use environment and get us a bigger picture, bigger context about it, so that when we are working with a low risk device in our own bubble, we don't overlook the use environment where other high risk devices are also in use. And through this Bluetooth connectivity, they may be impacted. So that is something to keep in mind. But, the funny thing that you mentioned, inviting John, I know him pretty well. He has been a guest on my program in the past. So certainly this is a topic worth discussing. And John is a systems engineer, system safety specialist. There's another thing we want to talk about today, right? How do we keep the overall system in mind and not get so sucked into this, specific requirement about wireless connectivity and testing and whatnot? How do we keep that system approach in mind? Can you share with us FDA's approach on this and how sponsors or device manufacturers should navigate those expectations?
Naveen, I thank you so much for raising that topic. It's one of my favorite, to be honest. I'm a fan of calling medical devices medical systems because in many cases, especially the cases that I work on, it's not a single device that is delivering the end intended use. So in your case, Naveen, you have a CGM, but that CGM is connected to an app on your phone. And most likely that app also interacts with a piece of software hosted on a cloud somewhere that is doing some analytics and maybe feeding you back alarms and informations and trending data. All of this together is the device. When evaluating that system, all of these components from end to end should be considered because a break in the functionality or an adverse event in the functionality for one of those components will likely result in an impact on other components.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I love it, what you said. Medical devices, we should start thinking of them as medical systems, not necessarily medical devices.
Well, Naveen, I think I can freely share that there are many smart people out there, smarter than me, that call them medical systems. And I learned that by listening to these smart people talk about this.
Very interesting.
Yeah, because again, look around you. Like just name one modern connected medical device that is operating completely independently. Honestly, I can't think of any.
Yeah. So, John has another question here. Are there any
Yes,
examples in the medical device world today where Bluetooth is being used for hard real time control?
that's a
Does
great
anything come to
question.
mind?
Now,
Hard real.
he used the magic word control. There are very few examples about direct control over wireless because of the failure modes that could be associated with the use of wireless in
Yeah.
a medical system.
Well, actually, Omar, now that it just popped into my head because I studied this
Hmm?
and I believe this example fits this
Yes.
particular category. About a year ago, there was
Hmm.
actually a class one recall of
Hmm.
a T Connect app
Hmm.
that controls an insulin delivery pump. And that app can actually control the controller through wireless functionality to
Yes.
deliver on demand insulin bolus.
Yes.
And this particular app was crashing for some reason. One version was crashing on iOS
Hmm.
and repeatedly rebooting. And
Yes.
as a result, it was draining the battery of the pump,
Hmm.
causing premature shutdown.
Yes.
So, am I on the right track with this, fitting this example into John's question? I think it is exercising control over that controller. Does it not fit that case?
It does to a T.
Right. So we can take it many different ways, but I think one of the things we want to mention here is that when we are designing these systems and products, we don't know what we don't know. So we have to be ultra vigilant,
Right.
and we want to make sure that our apps work and
Hmm.
don't cause. And I think that is the reason why FDA classified this as a class one recall, because
Hmm.
there was a potential for injury since the app was not just a display functionality, not just a trending and monitoring functionality. It
Correct.
was actually involved in taking action for a clinical result. And that is
Yes.
why there was a problem. Guys, if you
Now,
want to learn more about that case study, I published that on Let's Talk Risk. I looked into it for a long time and I was so
yes.
fascinated. Please,
Naveen,
please take a look at and check it out.
if I may add just a quick comment on this topic as a follow up, control can be thought of through multiple lenses. Okay. So if you're uploading a new drug library to an infusion pump, you're basically controlling that infusion pump, aren't you? If you're
Mm-hmm.
updating any of the settings on your insulin pump, you're also controlling that insulin pump. So issuing a command to administer a bolus is also a type of control. In some other areas, like surgical devices, for example, and surgical robots, control is actually moving the robotic arm. Control can have multiple flavors. For Bluetooth in particular, obviously it's very, very common in diabetes devices,
Mm-hmm.
and that is both for the capture of information and also for the control of those devices. Now, where does that put the specific function of a given medical device on the risk spectrum? The manufacturer of the device should consult the AMETIR 69 document and look at what are the different functions, the different wireless functions being implemented in that medical device, and then classify each of those.
I
Because
got you.
the device can have 5 different functions. One of them can be a major risk function, and another one can be a minor.
Got you. So John here is clarifying here that that's likely not a hard real time, but rather timely.
Mhm.
And the difference here is hard time means to a schedule. So that if there is yeah, I think there are nuances to it. And what you are saying is that there is a lot of guidance out there, refer to it. And guys, we're going to share that in the show notes with you. And we have to, from a risk management point of view, Omar, what it brings to my mind is we have to be willing to go deep into the consequences of the failure of those control actions. And
That is
this is
correct.
where what we mean by foreseeable sequence of events, hazardous
Correct.
situations, harm. So basic foundation of risk management principle is very strong. We just have to apply it and for this particular case. So great.
Correct.
I love this conversation. And guys, thank you for your engagement. Please keep it coming. We still have about 10 minutes or so. Omar, I want to touch upon another topic that
Mhm.
popped into my head recently since I came across a LinkedIn post from you. And looks like
Mhm.
you did a lot of work in this area on this whole notion of wireless immunity, medical
Yes.
device immunity. Tell
Yes.
us what that is and why it's important from a safety perspective.
For sure. Immunity is an aspect of the electromagnetic compatibility of a medical device. Basically, what it's referring to is the ability of a medical device, regardless of its use of wireless technology. So you can have a medical device that has no wireless technology, but you will still want that medical device to operate, to be safe, and to perform its intended function adequately in its environment of use. Okay, so in that sense, we should have an understanding of the type of electromagnetic disturbances that could exist in that environment of use. There is a very long-standing tradition in how to perform this evaluation through the IEC 60601-1-2 standard with very clear guidance. It's been out there for a number of years and it's widely adopted. Now, that standard and most other evaluation standards, from my perspective, need to evolve over time and to capture the newcomers to a given environment that could raise additional questions and additional test vectors that medical devices should be evaluated against. In this case, the topic of, okay, now we launched the 5G communication network. Will the recently introduced electromagnetic disturbances coming out of cell phones and cell towers using 5G have an impact on medical devices? This is exactly the same question that was asked by the -1-2 community for Wi-Fi, for 4G, for a long list of other technologies that were introduced to the environment. And those resulted in what's called Table 9 in 60601-1-2 is currently being, not only Table 9, the entire standard is being revised to be updated and to catch up with those recent evolutions in the use environment. So the LinkedIn post that you're referring to was asking the question, how do we design an immunity test signal based on a live wireless signal? Because the live wireless signal is a very complex signal. It carries data, it's modulated in a very intricate way. And the immunity test signal, it needs to have simple and clear parameters so that test labs can recreate it. So what is a good test signal that can be used to test for medical device immunity to 5G signals? And that was a very, very interesting project that I was part of when I was with the FDA.
And I think you published a paper on that, right? So we will give a reference to that in our show notes.
I am a co-author on that paper.
Wonderful. Now, Bijan has an interesting question here.
Yes.
If we take a wired connection as a benchmark, how reliable would a wireless connection need to be in comparison? Is there any guidance on that?
Honestly, I don't know what kind of guidance is being expected here. Compared to a wired connection, wireless should be specified as to what it means, because the reliability of a cellular connection is vastly different from that of a Wi-Fi connection. And throw Bluetooth into the mix, you muddy the waters even further. We really need to be specific on which connectivity modality is being considered to replace a wired connection. It might make perfect sense to just drop in a Wi-Fi module and just go be happy. It might be a bad idea.
You know, you are bringing a nuance here that we have to be aware of, that wireless is not one thing. It can be many different things.
It's absolutely not one thing. No.
Okay, great. We have another question here. We have so much engagement here, so I'm going to move through them fast, Omar. Yeah. Have there been any advancements in signal processing algorithms to establish and maintain a stable, efficient connection between a medical device and its controller? What's the latest here?
There is an incredibly impressive body of work in the wireless communication community addressing this specific issue. There are many excellent solutions out there, but again, I would like to remind the audience in general that regardless of how great a solution is, that doesn't negate the need for going through an evaluation process for how that solution was implemented as part of the medical device system. Because let's go back to the case of the wired connection, okay? According to how you implemented that wired Ethernet connection in your particular system, it might behave differently. So it's not only, it's hard to carry on the assumption that, okay, I'm just using wired connection, then I'm good. No, it's really a big picture that should be evaluated as a big picture.
Got you. Yeah. I think you're talking basically, again, the configuration, the architecture, how the system performs, right?
Correct.
Great, guys. We are having so much fun with this conversation that time flies. We are almost at the end of our 30 minutes. So I'm going to give Omar a few minutes to just process his thoughts about our conversation today and leave us with 2 or 3 key takeaway points. In the meantime, I'm going to share with you some announcements. The first one is actually also very exciting. Next week, I'm going to have a guest who will talk about the rapidly evolving AI regulation environment in the US. And also we know about the EU AI Act. So we're going to talk about that, particularly in the context of medical devices. So if that interests you, please show up. The announcement has gone out on LinkedIn. Again, it'll be next Friday at 11 Eastern. The second announcement is something that might interest you also. I'm going to have another session of my 4-hour post-market safety surveillance workshop in probably mid to late August. And post-market surveillance is an area of great interest and also great challenge in our industry. We know that. And during my professional experience, I got some experience actually implementing a hands-on system. So I'm going to share with you those learnings, but we'll also review the regulatory requirements and how to actually build an efficient operation for post-market safety surveillance. So if you are interested in that, please reach out to me and I'll share with you some details. With that, Omar, the floor is yours. Please share with us some 2-3 key takeaway points.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank you for the opportunity. The key takeaway that I would like to share with the audience is that the topics of hardware, software, interoperability, cybersecurity, and connectivity, these are all interlinked. It's really counterintuitive to address one of them in separation of the others. Cybersecurity is a very important topic that is being discussed at length by the community now, but paying attention to cyber, even though it's very worthy, doesn't negate the need to pay attention to these other very interlinked topics. So I invite the community to consider the big picture when they're describing their system in an FDA submission and when they're designing an evaluation approach for that system. So I would say drop the thought of, hey, let's flip switches and check boxes that we've done X, Y, and Z, and take a step back and look at what is your end-to-end system, how is it configured, what can go wrong in that end-to-end system, and then what's your plan to evaluate those test scenarios, capture the outcome, and communicate it to it.
Very nice. Thank you for emphasizing that connected systems-based approach once again, Omar. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights with us. Guys, I'm sensing a lot of interest in this topic. So in the chat, please share with me if you would be interested in a slightly longer discussion on this topic, and we can plan and prepare a little bit better. We can collect your questions and comments in advance. But if you would be interested to do that, please show your reactions using the emoji icons in the chat window or drop a comment. You can reach out to me personally if you don't want to share that in an open forum like that. But if there is more interest in this topic, we will consider another session. But thank you once again for showing up today and participating with so much energy and enthusiasm about this topic. Omar, thanks once again and I appreciate your time. I wish you all the best in your practice.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.